One of the more triggering statements that I make to people is when I say you're at best average. And that hurts a lot of people's feelings. I think we are ingrained to think that we are somehow better than everybody else. And that's a story that we tell ourselves. It's a story that society expects us to be. And it sets us up for a lot of failure. It sets us up for thinking that, most of us, if we're thinking that we're extraordinary, we think that, we are behind if we're not meeting those extraordinary moments, that we should be, a billionaire by the time that we're 35 or whatever, right? And, we often think if we don't think of ourselves in averages, we have completely skewed understanding of where we actually should stand. And then we think of ourselves, for example, in our generation, that we're behind our generation, or that some of us might think that we're even ahead of our generation based on sort of how delusional that we actually are. But I want you to imagine that if you think of yourself as just, hey, I'm just the average person, doing average is actually pretty spectacular. And that means that you are well ahead, you're 50% ahead of what everybody else is doing, give or take kind of the distribution and what it looks like. But that is a good target. If you think of yourself as average, then you will actually accomplish a lot of stuff. Many people are not. And being average in a number of different things is actually pretty hard to do, right? Think of being average in sports and, the religion that you're in, and, being an average parent or, child, like any number of those different things, you start adding those up, or, in the work domain, you start adding that up, it means you're actually pretty spectacular, right? There is this great podcast, Planet Money. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but this podcast actually went and tried to find the average person. We think of the average person as like, it's actually easy to find them. It's spectacularly hard. The whole podcast episode, you look it up, is them trying to find the average person, and an average person does not exist. It was like one person in the entire population of 350 million people in the United States that they were able to find this particular average person, because it's so outstanding to find that. And what you really should be thinking about in most of the things that you actually do is that average is actually good, right? That is a good thing. And by doing that, you can actually recalibrate and understand where you should be, right? For me, it's very helpful to know, hey, I'm building, so for example, this whole reciprocity project, I'm building this platform, right? It's sort of aimed at, there is a lot in sort of PhD world, academic research world, where a lot of people feel bad about themselves, right? Because they're constantly comparing themselves to the top players. And so they're always behind, right? They're never going to be that good. They don't understand that the top players have a totally different resources available to them than the ones that, are average. And because of that, you recalibrate in the wrong way, right? So for me, I'm building this from the ground up. I'm at a respected university that people know, but it's not the top. We don't get the top resources, that there's not a university press, for example, right? Like I'm not complaining in any sort of way, but I know where I stand, right? And if I do that, if I compare myself and I think, hey, I don't have venture capitalists knocking down the doors and all that kind of stuff of what, some of the stories that are told, but I don't think any of those stories are actually true. But because I know I'm average, I know that this is going to take some time. I know that I have to do things that are kind of unusual. I know that this is painful. Right? If I look at this and I think, hey, you know what? If I'm going to be the average person and I'm going to be pretty normal with this, then everything is going to be a uphill climb. This is not going to come easy in any sort of way, and I have to think about ways of doing this as an average person. And how do I do that? Well, I'm in my car, right, waiting for the pharmacy to open, which is going to open very soon. And so I was like, I'll do a video, because that's the way I build this. I'm an average person doing average stuff, and I don't have the time to do all of the things that everybody expects me to do. And if that's the case, if I'm an average person, I'm going to make two, right? I have to find little tiny moments where I do this, where, I'm doing in my day to day, I can do these kind of tiny things. And if I have that knowledge, then I am just average, right? Normal Joe Schmo, then I'll be able to do these things. I'm not going to feel bad. Otherwise, people would say, oh, this is not good enough. You're not doing a good enough job. This is not professional, blah, blah, blah. And I'm never getting any of this stuff done, right? But if I have this view as I'm average, and average is actually spectacular, like terrible for a lot of this stuff if you look at it. Hey, this is not bad. I'm doing okay. I can build these things one little tiny step at a time. And everybody else that sort of says the opposite, they don't know what they're talking about. They've never done it. They haven't got a clue, right? So how do I do this? One step at a time, being an average Joe, just being right square in the middle. And I could do that as many times as I possibly can. In fact, many times I'm probably going to be ridiculous and terrible, but that's what an average person does, right? I want you to think about that. That's what average people do. They get up and they do it and they try. And most average people quit, right? Like the average person quits. So I'm well above what average should be at this moment. And if I look at that, I'm like, all right, I'm doing okay. So just remember that you're at best average. You're going to do okay. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.